welcome to Health Hope. My name is Joan Warner and I am your stand-in host. Today we have with us Paul Dysinger with Bountiful Blessings Farm. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you.
So could you tell us a little bit about your farm, what type of farming you do?
Okay, so we have what would be classified as a small-scale family organic farm. You know, most people, when they think about farming, a picture that might come to their mind is hundreds of acres of wheat and corn and sorghum, or, you know, in huge combines and machines. And we have taken a bit of a different approach in that we actually grow in a very small space, but we grow just a huge variety of vegetables and berries and herbs, you know, over 50, maybe even 70 varieties of all kinds of things. So it's small scale and it's a family-run farm.
And how did your family get started in this industry?
That's a really good question, because when it comes down to it, you know, we don't have the privilege of saying my dad was a farmer, my grandfather was a farmer, or something like that. We don't have that heritage behind us. In fact, both of my grandfathers were doctors, are doctors.
Oh, wow.
Were. And my parents both have their masters in public health, and we spent 16 years overseas. I was actually born in Sudan doing, you know, they were doing rural development work out in villages. And so we don't come from that background. And my uncle, who actually started the farm, is a teacher. He had his master's in education, and he went from teaching and decided to start this small family organic farm. And so that's how it all started, was with him. And then, long story short, my family ended up joining him. He started it back in 1998, so it's been, what, 14, 15 years now. And then my family joined in 2006. Yeah.
And what were the goals for organic farming? Did you have any goals before you started?
Yeah, you know, it kind of goes to a philosophy of why would you want to do an organic farm versus a conventional farm in the first place? And part of that, you know, one basic one is that the taste quality is just incredible, because you're working with the systems of nature to give the plant the most conducive environment to grow, and for that plant to also have the best nutrients that it can have, which ends up giving us the most nutrients. So you talk about nutrient-dense vegetables that are just full of nutrients, which gives you the best taste quality. But even more than that, or next to that, is this whole idea that, you know, if you just think about it, many times in conventional agriculture, or they're doing this all the time, is they're going out into their fields and they're literally spraying these crops with poisons.
Right.
And if you just kind of step back and think about it, why would you want to be spraying your food with poison? And there's all kinds of other detrimental effects that ends up happening with the pesticides and the herbicides and all these chemicals, where organic is taking an approach where let's leave the chemicals aside, let's work with the natural systems that God has created in nature to grow food the way it was meant to be grown in the first place. So.
Yeah, I didn't even know I liked zucchini or eggplant until I started growing an organic garden myself.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I just didn't like it. Yeah, like, oh, this is good. This is really good.
It's interesting you say that, because many of our customers, you know, we introduce them to a lot of new vegetables, and you know, we hear comments back from them that, you know, this is the best that I've ever tasted. You know, the tomatoes are just, you know, way better than those cardboardish like ones you'll find in the grocery store or something like that. So it definitely is true. Yeah.
You have an interesting story about some schoolyard bartering, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. Oh boy, that goes back to what we do is we do what's called a CSA. It's called Community Supported Agriculture, and so basically people sign up for a subscription, and we give them a box of produce every week. And so one of our members, who actually ended up being my violin teacher as well, her son would take our veggies to school with him. And specifically our carrots, we grow the sweetest winter carrots, and it's something about the freeze just sweetens them up, and they're just absolutely crisp and sweet like candy. And so so he would take these to school, and lunch break would come around, and all the kids would come together, and they had this little bartering system where Joe would barter his sandwich for someone else's sushi or whatever. And so, what do you know? But at the top of the bartering list was the carrots from Bountiful Blessings Farm. It was like the carrots and one other item or something like that. And what would you guess? 10, 12-year-old kids at school just absolutely love the carrots that are grown organically. It's just a little testimony for the incredible taste that can come out of working with the systems that God has created in nature to grow a vegetable the way it was actually meant to be grown in the first place, instead of dumping it with herbicides and synthetic fertilizers and all of that.
So I guess most people use those to keep the pests away, so you must have a pretty good trick to keep the pests away, right?
Yeah, that's something that I think a lot of people, when they think about gardening, there's a few things that come up that are like little walls or something. Like, one might be, I've got the black thumb that everything dies that I touch. And another one is, what do you do with all the pests that come in? And it kind of goes to a certain philosophy that we have, in that we look at the pests as this problem, and then we go at it as proactively to attack the problem itself. And so we're out there to kill the pests and to destroy the pests, and it's like this little war that we're waging in our garden. Whereas if you just kind of flip it around and think about it from the opposite angle, what if the pest was, instead of the problem, what if it was a symptom of a deeper problem? Oh. And a good illustration is with our bodies. We, in our bodies, to have a healthy body, or I should say, when we do have a healthy body, we're more resistant to disease. Bugs will come and we'll fight it off easier. And it really is basically this exact same principle that is happening in the organic garden. If you have a healthy plant that has grown, it has the nutrients that it needs, and it has grown to its potential, it will actually be resistant to the bugs. The bugs won't go after the healthy ones, the bugs go after the diseased ones. And so, so the whole philosophy is build up a rich, healthy soil that is full of good microbial life that is providing the plants with the nutrients that they need. And if you grow a healthy plant, that you'll take care of the bug problems simply by doing that. And it can take time to get to that point, and it's something that we've seen in my work with Bountiful Blessings Farm on our little family farm. Year after year, we've had less and less bug problems as we've worked, and we've seen it firsthand. We had a greenhouse where we had a bed of spinach in it, and we could come into what had happened was we had actually, when we set up the greenhouse, we had actually scraped the dirt off to one side. It was kind of on a hillside, so all the topsoil got put onto one end, and there wasn't as good soil on the other. And this bed of spinach just kind of magnified that. As you looked at the bed of spinach, it was rich and beautiful and lush on one end, and then as it went to the other, it kind of tapered off, and there were a little more yellowish leaves. And
so what did you do to make that soil rich?
Well, yeah, one thing, probably the biggest top thing that we do is we add really good quality humus or compost. Okay. Most people would think of it as compost. And so what ended up happening in that scenario was we ended up having bugs came in and started having a bug problem. And the fascinating thing is you could go from the one end that had the poorer soil, that had, the leaves were a little more yellow, and it would just be riddled with bugs. Wow, but as you went up to the other end, where the plants had a richer soil to grow in, they had more of the nutrients that they needed, there was just a bug hole here and there.
And you made this? You made this soil yourself?
No, this is it's the natural soil that was
But you added to it?
We did add to it. We add, like I said, we add compost, which is the main thing that we add. We do add some other micronutrients, some crushed rock phosphates, green sand, which is...
That's interesting.
They're all natural sources that add just a wide variety of micronutrients to the soil. But the main thing, and something that anybody can do starting right now, is add good quality compost that has been composted down for a couple years. Compost that looks and feels like dirt. You know, it smells like dirt. It's good. Good
And
stuff.
this is something that any gardener can make, correct?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Is it?
Yeah, to make it from your kitchen scraps, you know.
Yeah.
Now, a little tip on that, real quick, if you want, is I think a lot of times people might take all their kitchen scraps and throw it into a pile and hope this is my compost pile, and it ends up being this icky, gooey, sticky mess, you know. And so you don't want that to happen. But so the way that you can do this without having the grossness of the compost is that a real compost pile needs both what we call browns and greens. So browns would be, and it's carbon and nitrogen and what it is, and browns would be your dry straw, and your dead, straw is the best one. Something that's dead, that's brown, you know, and then your greens are like your fresh stuff, like your kitchen scraps that are more fresh. And
not necessarily the color green, but green meaning the live foods.
Green meaning that they're live, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you want to mix it, and you kind of do like a little lasagna layer. You put in a layer of straw, your browns, and then you put in a layer of the greens. And you can actually throw in some soil to help kind of inoculate it with the bacteria that helps break it down. And then as you do that, like a lasagna layer like that, it doesn't have to end up becoming so, you know, gross.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
And the green sand you were talking about, where would one purchase the green sand?
You know, there are different sources. The first one that comes to mind, if you're a home gardener and you're interested in purchasing it, you can purchase it from Amazon.com.
Oh, really?
You know, they have little packets of it. But actually, and another source that you could look on, I believe Johnny's Seeds has it as well. You know, we buy it in larger quantities because we're a farm, and so I'm not up on all the best places that a home gardener could just get a small amount.
Right.
But I know that you can. I'm pretty sure that you can get it there.
Yeah, I had never heard about the green sand before. That's fascinating. If you get in a position to where maybe you just can't get rid of the pests, you know, we've had a particularly hot winter and we have more pests. If you were going to use a pesticide that would be more user-friendly, less poisonous to us, what would you use? Yeah,
absolutely. And you know, so this does happen, especially when you're first starting, and you know, you haven't built up the soil to the maximum potential that it can have. And so, you know, what do you do when all of the pests come in? And there are natural organic, what you call pesticides, that you can use. The flip side to it, and we actually try and steer away from even using those.
Right.
We try and not use anything, even the organic ones, because in one way, it's kind of like, you know, there are natural poisons in the world too, you know.
Okay.
But there are natural ones that aren't necessarily a poison, but they do hurt the bugs, whereas they don't hurt us. And one that you could use specifically for worms, like if you're dealing with tomato hornworms on your tomatoes, or is called dipel. And it's a natural dust that actually, when the worm ingests it, it breaks down the stomach of the worm, and so it can't eat anymore, and so it ends up.
Oh, and so
dying.
that's a natural. It's not anything that has any type of chemical in it at all. Is what you're saying?
Right. It's a natural.
Well, that's
natural
interesting.
resource. Yeah.
So the term organic doesn't always mean that it's chemical free, is what you're saying, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it depends on how technical you want to get, because everything is made up of chemicals and molecules and whatever, and so it's more the synthetic chemicals that we refine down to, you know, what we want to make, and a lot of them can just be incredibly toxic.
Right.
And so
known carcinogens, right?
Yeah.
There seems to be like 8 natural doctors. Would you like to expound on that?
Yeah, you know, so some people talk about what they call 8 natural doctors, and there's like this little acronym that you can use called New Start. And natural doctors in that they're natural things that we can do to improve our health, or natural things that give us better health. And so, so with New Start, you have nutrition and exercise, and W is for water, and then sunshine and temperance and fresh air and rest and trust in God. And all of these things are aspects of our life that give us the health, good health. And so we kind of like to look at gardening as, and nobody's really challenged us on this. My uncle especially likes to talk about this. Gardening is like the only occupation that packs all of those things into one activity, because you're out in the garden and you're getting the best nutrition possible from your plants, because you're growing them as naturally as you can and you're giving them the most nutrients that you can. And then you're getting exercise, and with all of that exercise, it makes you want to drink more water. And you know, you could go through them all. Temperance is kind of one that is a little bit harder to figure out how it fits in, but
well, you quit working.
Yes,
yeah.
And when it comes to rest, you know, after a hard day's work, you end up your rest is so much sweeter. So, yeah.
All that good air is just, and you know, the trees. You're around the pin oaks, you're around the fir tree, you're around the evergreens, and all that's like a natural aromatherapy, and that helps keep you well also, correct?
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
I understand that you brought us some of this food.
I did. I brought a little box. It's kind of somewhat...
Our camera operator, Cindy Davis, she put this together for you. She did a good job.
She did. She did. It's beautiful.
So you brought a little bit of sage, and what else did you bring?
So, yeah, tomatoes are probably one of the most popular that we grow, and you'll just never taste a tomato as good as one that is grown on a small organic family farm. They just taste nothing like those cardboardish ones in the store. And so, you know, we're in this season switch because it's fall and we're switching into winter, and so we've got some of the summer vegetables like your bell peppers and eggplants and tomatoes. And then coming in with the fall, we're getting into more of the fall vegetables with your kale and lettuce and some of your more cool weather crops, your scallions or green onions. And
these are what you actually bring these to the farmer's market and different markets here in town?
Right, yes. So these are the vegetables that we'll bring to the farmer's market, or like I said, we give in the subscription box where people actually get like a half bushel box.
Are there any side effects to pesticides, do you think?
Like for our for our health? You know, I am not actually as studied into all the side effects on our health that pesticides have, except for the fact that we just face huge health problems here in the States, period. But there's, you know, with the pesticides and synthetic fertilizers, there's side effects that go far-reaching into our world even. You know, you have, what ends up happening is these pesticides and the synthetic fertilizers go down into the soil, and they end up destroying the soil structure that is so important for the plant health, and they kill and immobilize beneficial microbiological life that's in the soil, bacteria, and what those bacteria are doing is they are keeping decomposition processes happening, and so that ends up stopping happening and keeps the plants from getting nutrients in a natural way. And as the soil structure breaks down, then we end up getting erosion, and we find it eroding off into the rivers, and so you see, you know, dark brown rivers that are just brown because they've had a lot of soil erosion. But the sad thing is what happens with that is as the soil erodes into the river, is it carries with it those chemicals, and they flow out into the ocean, to where we actually now have quite a large, it's called a dead zone, down in the Gulf. And yeah, you can go online, search for a dead zone in the Gulf, and you'll come up with pictures of just this dead zone that these chemicals have come in, and it just, life doesn't grow there. And
no fish, no algae,
dead.
Nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
Like the Dead Sea, huh?
So you have all of that besides the detriment to our health by eating things that are toxic for our bodies, toxic chemicals. I mean,
and the rivers and the streams and the creeks it goes into also.
Exactly. I mean, listen to the story of my uncle he started out as a strawberry farm, and we were, I believe, the first organic strawberry farm in the Middle Tennessee area. And so he would go to strawberry growing conventions and workshops. And so he was at one of these strawberry, and it's a conventional workshop. They're talking about conventional strawberry growing. And so they were sharing about how you want to spray this herbicide or pesticide or whatever it was on your strawberries. And literally, you had to dress up in basically a hazmat suit, the mask and full body suit, and go out there and spray your strawberries. And so they were telling all these strawberry growers, you might not want to go out during a time of day where you're going to have a lot of traffic coming by your farm, because if people see you out in your strawberry patch dressed up in this hazmat suit spraying your plants, they might not be so inclined to buy from you.
Right.
And it's just, why are we doing things that have to go and almost cover up? We don't want people to see us doing what we're doing. It's not a transparent system.
So you have, in addition to the vegetable growing, you also have greenhouses, correct?
That's right. Yes, and so we grow, like I said, very intensively on a small amount of land. And one of the best ways that we do that is that we use greenhouses or hoop houses, which hoop houses are basically unheated greenhouses, so we don't heat them. And it helps us to be able to extend our season all the way through the winter, so we're actually growing fresh food all year long, literally, harvesting fresh food in the middle of January. We have pictures of, a little basket of food with snow on the ground. It's amazing. It really is.
Now, every year you grow on this land. Do you do that year after year after year and never lay off the land, or do you take a break at a certain point? How does that work?
Yeah, good question. So what we do is we rotate crops. And in the greenhouses themselves, we're pretty much growing so intensively that the land doesn't get a lot of time to rest. We're putting new crops in, and so we end up putting in a lot of compost. We're putting in a lot of nutrients back into the soil. But especially out in the field, we're rotating, and we'll grow what's called a cover crop or green manure, which is basically where you'll grow a whole field of rye or something, and you'll just let the field rest, and then you'll till that back into the soil, and as it decomposes, it puts nutrients back into the soil. So it's not always, our soil isn't always in vegetable production. We do have somewhat of a little rotation going on. Wow.
And in addition to that, you have an online university, correct?
Yeah, that's right. In kind of merging, I love to teach, and I love to share with people, and so when I came to the farm and I've been working with my family on the farm, it kind of merged those two things, and I ended up being somewhat of a self-taught web designer. I built the website for our farm, and so kind of merging those two things together ended up creating an online gardening university and blog, sharing, because the interest in growing healthy food is just rising exponentially or incredibly across our nation. And so not everybody can come out to the farm to learn. So it's a way that we can share how we're doing this with other people that can't quite make it out to actually learn on the farm.
Do you have videos on this online university?
Yes. So in fact, I have a blog, and borntogrow.net, where people can get on, and I have blog posts, and there's little videos that people can watch about, just interesting topics like we were just talking about, like what do you do with a pest? How do you deal with a pest? And I list some more natural things that you can do for dealing with pests. And what about growing in a small space if you're in an urban environment, or other videos like that. Very informational.
If you lived in an urban environment, how do you grow in an urban environment?
Yeah, right. So of course, I think the best thing is always to grow in the soil itself, in the natural soil. And even in an urban environment, you can do that by bringing in pots or containers. People call it container gardening, and it's like the window box idea. And so you can do that. Now, a couple things with that is you want to make sure that they have good drainage, because you can end up waterlogging your plants. So you want those pots to be able to drain water. And then also they will need to have some more. You'll probably need to replenish the nutrients in the soil more often, because you're growing in such a small space. So, but it's something that you can do even in the city, in an urban environment.
Can you do potatoes pretty good there?
If you had a little space outside, I mean, you could try this inside if you wanted to, but you can get like a tire, an empty tire, just like a used tire, and stack them up and grow potatoes inside it. People hill potatoes because you want the potatoes to grow under the ground, and so you can put your potato in it and then add more dirt to it, and you can even stack, several several tires on top of each other. It's a neat way that you could try it.
I want to thank you, Paul, for being with us again today on Health Hope. And again, would you tell us your website?
Yeah, absolutely. For those interested in gardening, go to borntogrow.net. borntogrow.net.
All right. Thank you again for watching Health Hope. Our website is www.health-hope.org. www.health-hope.org. We'll see you next time. Thank you.